they don't just like ignore each other on the street. They will say hello and they won't just be like, hallo, hallo, and then keep walking. They'll be like, ah, hey, alles gut? Ja, ja, auch, danke. Hello and welcome back. If you haven't been here before, my name is Jenna and I am a Canadian who has been living here in Germany since 2014. I share all of my stories, all of my culture shocks over here on this channel, but if you're moving to Germany, don't forget to go check out lifeingermany.com as well. Today, I'm going to talk about some of these habits that I used to have as a Canadian living in Canada and that I've since dropped after living almost 7 years here in Germany. Habits come and go. Of course, you can adopt new habits and maybe I'll talk about that in a video in the future. But today, there are a serious number of things that I used to do that I don't do anymore. And I've picked some of those core ones that I notice on a daily basis that I have entirely dropped here to share with you. So if you live in Germany or if you've been to Germany before, you probably know that Germans can be rather superstitious. There are a lot of things that they do, like throw salt behind their shoulder or knock on their head when they don't want to jinx something. And this is something that I've adopted since living here in Germany. So in Canada, we say knock on wood when you don't want to jinx something and when you hope that everything goes well. So you would literally just knock on wood. But here in Germany, at least where I'm living, most people tend to knock on their head. And instead of saying knock on wood, you say, yeah, toi toi toi. So I've really adopted that. I never say knock on wood. I never knock on wood. And it's probably because it's so much easier just to knock on your head when you don't want to jinx something rather than going around like searching everywhere and finding somewhere that is actually made of wood to knock on. So makes life a little easier, nah? Another one which I'll mention right off the bat is in Canada, a lot of us do, not everybody, but I think a lot of us constantly say A. It's really hard to kind of explain this one, and that's because people try to mimic or imitate Canadians and they'll say like,
how are you doing today, eh?
And they just like throw it in completely entirely wrong context. But we use the word A similar to in Germany, a lot of them will say like ne. So in Canada, for example, we would say, oh, the weather's so awesome today, eh? And it's usually because we're expecting a response back where you'd be like, yeah, it's awesome. And in Germany, a lot of people would say, oh, the weather's so nice today, nah? And this is something that I've adopted 100%. I'd say probably almost too much. If you've watched any of my other videos, you might also notice that when I'm speaking English, sometimes ne just comes out at the end of the sentence. I don't know why. It's a habit I've adopted and a Canadian habit that I have dropped since living in Germany. So the next habit you Germans are going to be very thankful for, and that is I have finally learned not to ask how you are if I don't sincerely care about how you are really doing. And now in Germany, I find a lot of people say something similar and they don't even really realize it perhaps. They don't just like ignore each other on the street. They will say hello and they won't just be like, hallo, hallo, and then keep walking. They'll be like, ah, hey, alles gut? Ja, ja, auch, danke. And then they keep walking. So there is still some sort of conversation. It's just saying, is everything okay? Rather than saying, how are you doing? You know, not this like therapist question. Rather just saying, hey, alles gut? If any of you have watched my video about things that I don't like here in Germany or the foods that I absolutely love here in Germany, you might already know that I call myself a chickatarian. I know you're supposed to call it pollotarian, but I just thought it was funny, so I used the word chickatarian. Other than that, I'm usually not too picky. But as a Canadian, you really learn how to ask for a specific item on the menu to be altered in some way, shape, or form. And I think it's just like natural for us now. So even when you're not picky, for example, I don't particularly love peppers, you know, like the red peppers, paprika. I would prefer to get them taken off of my meal rather than in, just because I feel like it takes over the flavor of a meal. I don't hate it, but I just learned, you know, if I don't love it, then why not ask for it either on the side or to be taken off. This is something you can do in Germany if you want. It's just you may or you may not receive a quite negative response. Again, there are some amazing restaurants here that will go above and beyond to make sure that you're happy, but in general, guys, in general, this is not the case. Usually servers do not like altering your menu because it takes longer and it's just extra effort from not only their side but from the cook side as well. Now I've learned just not to do it. It's not that I'm saying that Germans are training me to be like, oh, I'm gonna order this off the menu and then pick it off myself. There are places that will still do this for you, so you can still ask here in Germany. It's just when you are not prepared for a negative response back, then sometimes things get a little bit depressing, so to say. It will literally like dampen my whole mood when I'll just be like, hey, you know, I don't like peppers, so can you just leave them off the salad? And they're just like, no. And then I'm like literally upset for the whole day. I'm such a sensitive person. Even when you guys give me negative criticism on YouTube, I read it and then I'm like, why did I read that? I know that I have to just like surpass that and get over it, but it's tough. You know, I'm still a sensitive person. Canadians are generally pretty sensitive people. Anyway, back to the subject. I no longer ask for things on the side or to be taken off of my meal. I will just do it myself because I don't want to piss anybody off. And lastly, this is a pretty big one for me. The habit of letting the days pass me by in Canada is something that I have completely dropped here in Germany. So what I mean by that is I find that my friends and my family, a lot of the time, especially in the greater Toronto area, we live for the weekend. That is like a typical thing in Canada, especially in the bigger cities. So we work, you know, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. We sit in tons of traffic. I know you do in Germany too, but I just find that in general, for some reason, a lot of you, a significant amount of you, including myself now living here in Germany, tend to find the best in every day. I know Germans like to complain, I've talked about that one before, but I think that in general, a lot of people living here in Germany do manage to find time for themselves, for their family, and for their friends. So if you live in a city and you're not traveling 3 hours in traffic every day, you might actually get to go out to a restaurant, play a game of football with your friends, go to the water park with your child, you know, like these are things that we don't really do in Canada, especially where I was living in the suburbs outside of Toronto. You have to drive everywhere. So if we wanted to go to a water park, I mean, we would like get in our car and drive halfway across the city to get there, and it would take all day. So this would be a day trip, whereas I think like Germany is so much smaller, so even when you do live in the suburbs, it's a lot easier to actually be like, hey, you know, let's go into the city and have dinner tonight. Of course, it's going to be a little bit more effort than if you were living in the city. That is very different. So this is my response. This is a habit that I dropped from moving over here and living in Freiburg and Düsseldorf. I've been to many other cities, but these are the only two I've lived, so this is where my experience is coming from. But I have learned, yeah, not to let life pass me by and to enjoy every day to the fullest. And I think that this is something that you know, as Germans can take as a nice comment. And I think that you guys should be proud of that because you guys do a really good job at, you know, building connections and relationships and making sure that they stay strong, enjoying the nature and, you know, going on bike rides. There's so much more of this than there is in North America, and I really, really appreciate it. So that is a habit that I was very excited to be able to drop and to be able to just take every day as it comes. And I hope that you do that as well too, whether you're German, international, not even living in Germany, not connected to Germany. This is something that I find that's so important for your mental health, and I'm just very thankful to be living here in Germany. So that's it for me today. I really hope you guys loved this video. Let me know if you're international or if you're German and you moved somewhere and then came back. What are the habits that you found that you've dropped since relocating to a new country? Vielen, vielen lieben Dank und wie immer, bis später.